What? Rules Committee will come to order, and good afternoon. Today, the Rules Committee will consider H.R. 897, Reducing Regulatory Burdens Act of 2615, or Zika Vector Control Act, H.R. 5055. Energy and Water Development Related Agencies Appropriation Act of 2017, and the Senate Amendment to H.R. 2576, the Toxic Substances Control or TSCA Modernization Act of 2015. H.R. 897 returns the state of pesticide regulation to the status quo that reflects a 2006 Environmental Protection Agency rule that was recently overturned by the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. State agencies, cities, counties, mosquito control districts, water districts, pesticide applicators, farmers, ranchers, forest managers, scientists, and almost everyday citizen who perform pesticide applications would benefit from this act, especially at a time when we have dangerous things that are happening all around us related to mosquitoes. Additionally, the current duplicative requirements in place impede an effective proactive response to the Zika virus that is currently spreading around the globe. I recommend this common sense legislation and, of course, look forward to hearing from members of the committee who will be able to discuss this in detail. The Rules Committee will also consider H.R. 5055, the Energy and Water Appropriations Act of 2017. This legislation, which is annual appropriations for energy and water development related agencies, including national defense nuclear weapons activities, the Army Corps of Engineers, and various programs under the Department of Energy. The bill responsibly funds infrastructure and defense projects that are critical to our nation's economy and safety while making tough choices so that taxpayers' funds are spent wisely. And yes, once again, we disagree with the President and added more money. The committee will also consider the Senate Amendment to H.R. 2576, the TSCA Modernization Act of 2015. This bicameral agreement represents a vast improvement over current law and takes a thoughtful approach to protecting people across the country from unsafe chemical exposure while setting a new standard for quality regulation. The bill provides certainty to an industry like the semiconductor industry, which rely on their ability to manufacture their products using essential chemicals in a controlled manner that protects both health and the environment. This legislation improves the safety of everyday products, from household cleaners to material used to make our automobiles, and I look forward to hearing not only from our expert witnesses, but also moving this for consideration to the floor. I would like to welcome the first panel, the gentleman from Michigan, the young Chairman Fred Upton, and also Chairman John Shimkus from Illinois, as well as Ranking Member Pallone and Congressman Gene Green. Thank you, all four of you, for taking time to be here today. I know that you have lots of things you can do, but this committee counts on you, your personal testimony, and the information that will be important for our committee to make sure we do the right thing. Obviously, without objection, anything you enter into that you bring today that you have in writing will be entered to the record. And I would wish to, at this time, defer to the gentleman from Massachusetts, the ranking member, for any opening statement you'd like to make.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I'll forego an opening statement and get right to our witnesses. I want to welcome them all here, and I yield back my time.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, we're delighted that you're here. That green light appears to be on. If I get you to speak directly into the microphone, it helps us to hear a little bit better. The gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is great to be back, and I look forward to being here twice tomorrow. TSCA reform has been a long time coming. It's been 40 years since we've looked at changing Title I. So it is time to modernize it for the global chemical market. The bill before you that we bring you today has many of the same policy features as the one that passed the House 398 to 1 last year. We reform the way that existing chemicals are regulated. We call for vigorous science to answer the question of whether a chemical presents an unreasonable risk, and that the decision is based on risk analysis only. If a chemical needs some kind of regulation, then we ensure that the economics and practical considerations apply. And if a chemical is to be restricted, are there alternatives that are just as good for human health and the environment? Are replacement parts affected? And we tell the EPA, don't restrict articles that contain chemicals if doing so does not reduce exposure. On preemption of state law, the bill contains the famous priority pause, which means that if the EPA has begun a full-fledged risk evaluation on a chemical, states must wait before introducing new restrictions on that chemical. But like the House bill, when EPA issues a final reg on a chemical, that the regulation applies coast to coast. So the bill would allow state-based tort claims and grandfather state chemical regs that have been on the books prior to this spring. The bill also protects trade secrets when companies share detailed information with EPA on a chemical. It includes secret formulations, marketing plans, and others. Like the House bill, the text requires a new process for healthcare and state officials to obtain confidential business information in the course of their work, as long as they understand that they cannot disclose it to others. Treatment of new chemicals in the compromise text is closer to the Senate-passed version, but the House had made no changes at all to the way that new chemicals are treated. Senate made an important policy change, which this draft includes. Before manufacturing a new chemical, a manufacturer must get a green light from the EPA. EPA must generally act within 90 days of receiving notice that a manufacturer wants to make a new chemical. Both industry and NGO stakeholders spoke up for that change. Industry gets some assurances for the market that the new chemical is safe, and consumers know that the new chemicals coming on the market have a green light from the EPA. So when the House takes up this bill tomorrow, we expect it to pass by a wide margin, and we expect that the Senate will take it up shortly and pass it without amendment. We're also told that the President supports it. We look forward to signing it into law. And I just got to say at the end, we worked hard. I compliment Mr. Pallone and his staff, certainly Mr. Green and Mr. Shimkus and the wonderful staff. But this is, at the end, I'm reminded of the analogy that this is like balancing basketballs. And we've got a basketball with Barbara Boxer's name on it, Ed Markey, Nancy Pelosi, Steny Hoyer, Frank Pallone, Vitter, Inhofe, the ACC, the Chamber of Commerce, obviously the administration and the EPA, and Upton. All of it is perfectly in line, and we look forward to a good vote tomorrow, and appreciate your help with this process, and yield to my friend Mr. Pallone.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Mr. Pallone, welcome back to the Rules Committee. We not only look forward to your testimony, but we're glad that you're back up here again. Chum's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. This is a very complicated issue, and I'm not going to try to, spend 5 minutes here or whatever and trying to get through all the details. I think, as Chairman Upton said, the problem has been that for the last, 40-some years, since the 70s, when TSCA, the Toxic Chemicals or the Toxic Substances Control Act, was first enacted, it's essentially been ineffective as a federal process. And so we've relied on states increasingly over that time to regulate chemicals, and sometimes other states follow suit, and sometimes the industry follows suit. But without a federal program, there's always been the concern that there isn't any kind of uniformity, and that states that don't have not enacted laws are not, that their citizens are not protected. So the general idea was that it would make sense to have federal law. The problem is, though, when you do that, we always have the issue of preemption. And preemption, frankly, has been the large issue here. This so-called pause preemption, if you will, that says that at a certain point when the EPA is working or has started working on a regulation, that the states are preempted from taking any action. Now, we've spent a lot of time, frankly, in the last month or so, trying on the House side, I would say, both Democrats and Republicans, to try to make this preemption less onerous, if you will. And the reason I'm here today supporting the bill and supporting the manager's amendment is because I believe that in the last few weeks, and particularly in the last week, we've made significant progress on dealing with this preemption issue. It's not going to be something that satisfies everyone. There are definitely going to be members tomorrow that will vote against the bill because they feel that their state's being preempted in a way that's not good for their citizens. But I believe that on the whole, we've come up with a bill with the manager's amendment, which I do also support, that will make a significant dent, if you will, in the preemption issue so that in most cases, or in a lot of cases, that the states will be able to continue with the strong laws that they have in regulating chemicals at the same time that we have a federal regime that can also be effective. So I think I'm going to leave it at that. I mean, I could give you all the details about how we're arriving at this point, but I'm not sure that you want to hear that right now unless you have some questions. Thank you,
very
Mr.
much,
Chairman.
Malone. Mr. Simkus, I'm going to get you to steal that microphone from the young chairman, Mr. Upton. Gentleman from Illinois is now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to be pretty brief, too. 1976, actually, I spoke at a high school commencement on Saturday, and I kind of used this as part of the speech. Was 1976 was a great year. I graduated from high school. I had plaid bell-bottoms, platform shoes, silk shirt, and an afro. Elsie.
What happened to the Marine?
So, and I said, it was not a pretty sight, right? And also 1976 was when Tosco was passed. I think well-intentioned, but it ended up not being a pretty sight either. And the whole debate about asbestos not being able to be banned was based upon the problems of this law. So we started working on it years ago. Some of us 5.5 years. Gene was with me a couple cycles too. And we just, EPA needed to use good science to render a judgment so that either the chemical would be banned or it would be allowed in commerce. There is this federalism and this preemption debate. I fall on the Interstate Commerce Clause aspect of it where we need to have a federal agency render judgment so that then states can't block the use of what we believe is a safe chemical across state lines. That was some of the frustration and the debates we had. We finally worked in a bipartisan manner and a bicameral manner to get this bill to a place where we're going to have, I think, big votes in both chambers. So, Chairman, with your help tomorrow, and then the following day we'll get our work done, and we have every expectation that the Senate's going to move it pretty quickly, and every expectation that the President's going to sign it. So, thank you for the time, and I'll yield back.
Thank you very much, Mr. Simkus. By the way, how did the speech go?
Great.
Well, you did enough enough to get invited back too, so thank you. Mr. Green?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and ranking members, members of the Rules Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify this afternoon in support of House Amendment to Senate Amendment to H.R. 2576, the Lautenberg Chemical Safety for the 21st Century Act. This bipartisan, bicameral proposal is the closest Congress has come to reauthorizing the Toxic Substance Control Act, TSCA. Enacted in 1976, TSCA was designed to protect human health, environment from harmful chemicals in commerce. Though well-intended, TSCA is a failed law that has weakened the public's confidence in chemicals found in everyday products, such as chairs, couches, automobiles, cleaning products. The House Energy and Commerce Committee has received testimony from EPA and GAO in recent years on the failure of the current law and the pressing need for Congress to act and update TSCA. As our chair of our subcommittee and the chair of the committee, our ranking member, I started on this in 2008 when I was chair of the Environment and Economy Subcommittee in Energy and Commerce. So this is not something that just developed recently. It's been worked on for many years. Though not perfect, the proposal before the Rules Committee today is, in the words of EPA, a clear improvement over current law and will address TSCA's fundamental flaws. The most notable improvements in the bill are replacing current TSCA burdensome safety standard with a pure health-based standard, requiring the protection of vulnerable populations like children, pregnant women, and workers at these chemical facilities, requiring a safety finding before new chemicals are allowed to go to the market, giving EPA new authority to order testing and ensure chemicals are safe with a focus on the most risky chemicals, provide EPA with the resources to do its job, and require that the industry do its share to support the program by providing $25 million in dedicated TSCA trust fund each year. Due to these and other improvements, this legislation is being supported by the Environmental Defense Fund, the National Wildlife Federation, the Humane Society, and other environmental public health organizations. The legislation will protect private citizens' access to the courtroom and not interfere with the state or local toxic laws. This proposal, in addition, has support of the American Chemistry Council, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and other private sector stakeholders because it provides regulatory certainty for American businesses throughout our economy, from upstream to downstream producers and processors. Our district in Texas is home to one of the largest petrochemical complexes in the country. The chemical plants along the Houston Ship Channel are the biggest employers in East Houston and eastern Harris County. My constituents live along those fence lines and also work in these plants. This legislation, by requiring for protection of vulnerable populations, directly addresses the safety of my constituents who work in these chemical plants, and it will help protect the fence line communities that sit next to these facilities. Congress has worked on reauthorizing TSCA going back to at least 2005. Personally, I've worked and introduced legislation to help modernize TSCA for nearly a decade. Last year, I was co-sponsor of TSCA modernization that passed the House by 398 to 1 and worked with my members testifying here today to make TSCA a reality. The passage of this legislation will be the first major environmental law passed by Congress in over a quarter of a century. It's an example of how, and with negotiation and compromise, the two parties can come together and pass important legislation. And I urge the committee to adopt the resolution and allow the floor vote on this important piece of legislation.
Ms. Green, thank you very much. Gentlemen, this is a lot of firepower for a bill, but I think it shows that success can have many fathers. Mothers, if you wish, but you're fathers. And I must confess that increasingly, I'd like to see this happen more often, where we find a way necessarily to set aside some views that we have to make something better. And making it better, I think, is up to all of us. Making something where we can work and find common ground is increasingly more valuable to me than ever. We have, if you read some of the things that are said here, out of perhaps misguidance, some people quit using things that are in the best interest, and people quit making chemicals that are used for the right things. I mean, it's a business that is, as Mr. Pallone said, a very technical and a very difficult business to really understand, and there are a lot of sides to it. Finding common ground is important. I don't need to say too much, except all four of you staying involved. The senior leadership of the committee is how it happened. Senior leadership in the Senate is how it happened. Senior leadership, I suppose, at the EPA is how it happened. I think it does take our time and attention to our business. I'm proud of all four of you for taking time to be here instead of sending just one person who might send a signal that we're all together. So thank you. What you're doing does matter, and quite honestly, I expect us to pay attention to our business and be successful. Mr. Woodall?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm reminded it was 3 years ago next week that Senator Lautenberg passed away. Act bears his name. Folks thought that was as close as we might ever get 3 years ago, and the four of you all sitting here proves those folks wrong. I don't have any questions. I've asked them all over the last 3 years and have those answers. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yields back time. The gentlewoman from New York.
No questions,
Does not seek time. Is there a Democrat that seeks time?
Everybody seems to be getting along so well, I think if I ask questions, it would only screw it up. So I've got to ask no questions.
Now, as soon as you say that, Mr. Polis?
Yeah, I did have a question, thank you. I was hoping that you could just explain kind of in layman terms how this kind of hybrid state preemption works with the 3-year period. I'm just still a little hazy on it.
You want to take a stab at it? Go ahead. If I don't agree with him, I'll tell you.
Okay.
What we have now is what was negotiated part in the preemption with the Senate side was a 1-year delay and a 3-year pause. So when a chemical gets brought to the EPA, the states do not have the ability to preempt that until there's a rendering of judgment from the EPA. And so the thing to also remember in Section 5, there's two main sections, Section 5, Section 6. One is new chemicals. how do new chemicals come to market. The biggest challenge of this is existing chemicals that have been out there that have never, because of the failure of the law, and the EPA to really handle the law was to, how do we get a handle on the existing chemicals that are in the marketplace right now? Right. So that's how this kind of worked out in the final agreement.
I'm going to not disagree with Congressman Shimkus, but I mean, I'm trying to be honest with you, because there are members on our side of the aisle that are going to vote against this. They're not here today, but there will be some that do. Let me just briefly say my opinion on it, right? Normally, when I say normally, you know, when we were in the majority, Congressman Polis, and we would pass a bill, the idea was that you would only preempt a bill if it was as strong, your federal bill was going to be as strong as the strongest state bill or the stronger state bills. And it was at the end. In other words, when the agency, in this case the EPA, had finalized their rule on a chemical, and at that point, the state was preempted, okay, from taking any action, because the theory was that they were going to, you know, whatever you did in Colorado wasn't necessarily going to be any better, okay? The problem here is that the bill that came over from the Senate, not the House bill, had this concept of a pause, which I had never heard of before. It may be around, but I've never heard of it before. Basically said that when the EPA started the process of regulating, not when they finished, but when they started the process of regulating, that there was a pause that could be from 3 to 4 years before the state could then take any action, okay? I don't like the pause. A lot of us on our side of the aisle don't like the pause because it's sort of a new concept, okay? So what we did is we spent some time on the Senate and the House side trying to deal with this pause preemption, a little different from normal preemption. I'll call it pause preemption. We now have, between the bill that was filed and the manager's amendment that you're considering today, significant ways to deal with that pause so it's not as onerous as it might seem. And I mean, I can go into those, but I don't know that you want to hear.
After the pause period is over, states can pass regulations that are above and beyond the federal ones, including banning?
Not if the EPA has finalized the regulation. No.
Okay.
Okay, but you know, if they have, I mean, again, John, you guys tell me if I'm wrong, there's still the idea of preemption that once you finalize a rule, whatever, that's the federal rule. But during this pause period, the idea is we don't want the EPA sitting around forever fiddling with this, what they're going to do, and in that time, the states can't act.
Sure.
So we have made some changes so that that fiddling is reduced. Is that accurate?
Yeah, Matt, on your time, so also part of the negotiations with the Senate was to provide some states, obviously we have given some states some leeway in some of the things they've already done. Prop 65 in California has been protected. The reason why our bill, the original bill, passed the House so easily is because we pushed for final EPA decision. And then when the EPA made a decision, then states couldn't preempt it because the EPA either said it was safe or not safe. This pause came about through the negotiation on the Senate side. And it just something that we couldn't break. And that's kind of what we have to consume for the good of the whole piece of legislation.
We didn't have it in the House bill. What we have now is pause with some, in my opinion, significant exceptions, okay?
Thank you.
Which we can go through, but I don't think you want to hear it.
I'll look forward to studying those offline, but as I make my decision, but thank everybody for their hard work on this bill, and I yield back.
Thank you very much. Dr. Burgess? One of your colleagues right here, Mike Burgess, serves us very ably. I don't know how often he shows up at Energy and Commerce and sleeps because he was up late the night
It's the first time I've met him.
But he's doing, he does a phenomenal job for us and is often described as one of the finest members of the Rules Committee. So I want you to know that you're loaning him to us, as the young chairman recognized I asked 4 years ago.
He supports Great Lake Water, too.
Yeah.
Supports, I beg your pardon? I'm just so thrilled that we're here today. I mean, my first term on the committee, we talked about this. Chairman Dingle, my second term on the committee, Chairman Dingle, we had a big hearing on this that lasted way into the afternoon and evening. I honestly didn't think we'd ever get here. So it really is a tribute to, for people who are just tuning in and think, well, this is great that they've done this bill and they've wrapped it up. This was a long time in the process. The gestation period of this was significant, and I know a lot of work and a lot of compromise has gone in. I think it goes a long way towards providing people some of the certainty they need in order to do these things that we ask them to do. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm thrilled that we're here today, and congratulations on your 40th high school graduation, Mr. Shimkus. I yield back.
Thank you very much. 40. That's good. That's good. Okay. I think y'all have done a great job, but I want to go back again and state what I think Dr. Berg just most eloquently said, and that is, it's a big issue. It's a big issue that got resolved rather than kicking the can down the road, and it got done because of all four of you. And to hear the name John Dingle again today isn't a bad name to hear also. So we give thanks to the chairman emeritus also. Thank you very much. The chair would now offer an opportunity for any member to come and speak on the Senate amendment to TSCA Modernization Act of 2015. Seeing none, this now closes the hearing portion, and we move now to H.R. 897, Reducing Regulatory Burdens Act of 2015, the Zika Vector Control Act. And I've been advised that the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Rouser, would be here standing in for Mr. Gibbs from Ohio. Mr. Bob Gibbs is not able to be here yet. And so, Mr. Rouser, I want to thank you for taking time. We did not anticipate seeing a Democrat colleague, but we're delighted you're here without objection. Anything you have in writing will be entered into the record, and the young gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you noted, I am here filling in for my good friend and Chairman Bob Gibbs, who is tied up, I believe, at the airport, and it's my pleasure to present this testimony on his behalf. Now, last week, this body acted to send additional funds to the Department of Health and Human Services to fight the spread of Zika, but we have not done everything we can to help our states and local governments prepare for and stop the spread of this devastating disease. There's no vaccine for Zika, as we all know. There are no easy treatments for the Zika-related birth defects and the effects of Guillain-Barré. The only way we can stop Zika is by eradicating mosquitoes before they start to spread it. Unfortunately, we currently have a regulatory system that will make the money we appropriated to fight Zika less effective and not go as far as at all. The United States has a bad court decision that will result in thousands upon thousands of dollars being spent on paperwork and not on killing mosquitoes. In 2011, the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals and National Cotton Council versus EPA reversed 60 years of common sense regulation by the Environmental Protection Agency and imposed Clean Water Act permitting on pesticide use. The Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act, also known as FIFRA, regulated pesticides for 60 years before the enactment of the Clean Water Act. In vacating the rule, the Sixth Circuit substituted judge-made policy choices for agency interpretations of the law. The court undermined the traditional understanding of how the Clean Water Act interacts with other environmental statutes. Now, H.R. 897 will clarify congressional intent regarding how the use of pesticides in or near navigable waters should be regulated. H.R. 897 will enable communities to resume conducting routine preventive mosquito control programs. It provides a limited exemption from the NPDES permitting process for pesticides authorized under FIFRA and used in compliance with the pesticide label requirements. Now, exempting pesticides from NPDES permitting is appropriate because EPA already protects human health and the environment under FIFRA. H.R. 897 was drafted very narrowly to address only the Sixth Circuit's holding in National Cotton Council and return state pesticide regulation to the status quo, basically before the court got involved in 2011. Now, the EPA provided technical assistance in drafting this bill so that it would achieve these objectives. More than 150 organizations representing a wide variety of public and private entities and thousands of stakeholders supported legislative resolution to this issue. To name a few, some of these organizations include the American Mosquito Control Association, the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture, the National Water Resources Association, the American Farm Bureau Federation, the National Farmers Union, Family Farm Alliance, National Rural Electric Cooperative Association, CropLife America, and Responsible Industry for a Sound Environment. Now, I want to thank Chairman Schuster and Mr. Gibbs for his leadership on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, as well as Chairman Conaway and Ranking Member Peterson at the Agriculture Committee for their leadership in putting together this good common sense bill. Again, this is a responsible, common sense bill that will help ensure public health officials aren't fighting Zika with their hands tied behind their back. I urge all members to support this good common sense bill, sponsored by our good friend, Chairman Gibbs.
Ms. Rosler, thank you very much. Does anyone on the committee seek to offer a question to the gentleman? Gentleman's recognized.
Yes, well, let me, first I'd like to do the statement of administrative policy on the TSCA. May I do that?
Yes, ma'am.
And I think I need to read it because it's unusual. The administration strongly supports the bipartisan, bicameral efforts to reform the Toxic Substance Control Act embodied in the Senate amendment of H.R. 2576. The bill is a clear improvement over the current TSCA and represents a historic advancement for both chemical safety and environmental laws. In the last paragraph, if the federal government is to restore public confidence in the safety of chemicals used in commerce and are an integral part of the nation's economy, it is essential that the Congress provide EPA with the necessary tools and authorities to effectively assess chemicals and regulate risks. And this legislation provides a solid foundation for advancing these goals, improving public health, and environmental protection. The administration encourages quick action, and I ask unanimous consent to put that in the record.
No objection.
Now, on the Zika bill here, this, you know, this is a horse of another color. And I'd like to quote from the CQ, which was May 16, 2016, last week. If I may, House Republicans using the fears of Zika virus, which we learned last week aren't prevalent here because most people on the committee don't believe Zika's in the United States, although it certainly is, that would remove Environmental Protection Agency pesticide permitting regulations under the Clean Water Act. Republicans renamed the bill H.R. 8797, which was originally titled Reducing Regulatory Burdens Act of 2015, and made it the Zika Vector Control Act. Boy, is that a reach. The Chamber plans to consider that under suspension of the rules Tuesday. But the important thing, the legislation by either name would prevent the EPA from requiring a permit for pesticide use near navigable waters. Democrats accuse the counterparts of playing political games to gut the Clean Water Act under the auspices of fighting the Zika virus, which can be transferred by water. Actually, I think it's been some 5 years that we've been trying to pass this bill. And if they just keep changing the name and finding a new disease, I think. So I certainly oppose this Clean Water Act destruction with a new name on it. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am. Is there any other member that seeks time? Mr. Rouser, good luck. I noticed that we got about 260 votes, 262 votes that occurred on May 17th. I would suggest to you and submit that I think you're on the right pathway. I think you'll be successful, and I'm going to tell Mr. Gibbs you did an awesome job representing him, and I want to thank the gentleman. If you brought anything in writing, please do read it for us, leave it for us, some stenographer, and she'll look through it and make sure it sounds like North Carolina, the guy said it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, sir. Is there any other member that seeks to be heard on this bill, H.R. 897? Seeing none, this now closes the hearing portion of H.R. 897. Chair would now open up H.R. 5055, Energy and Water Development Related Agencies Appropriation Act of 2017. We have the gentleman, Mr. Simpson, who I note who is here, and the gentlewoman, Ms. Capter, who I do not see yet. But, Mr. Chairman, we're going to have you go ahead and come on up to the table. We're delighted that you're here, Mike. I really couldn't wait to get you up here. We enjoy having you before the committee every year. You're doing an awesome job, not only for the people of your great state of Idaho, but you're a very dear friend, and we're delighted the gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. It's my distinct honor to bring the fiscal year 2017 Energy and Water Bill before you today. Before I go into the details, I'd like to thank you and the other members of the committee for the hard work that you put into to make sure this institution moves forward. It's a lot of hard work serving on the Rules Committee. A lot of people don't realize that. I'd also like to recognize the hard work of Chairman Rogers and Ranking Member Lloyd to bring this bill to this stage in the process. I'd also like to thank my ranking member, Ms. Capter, who will be here shortly. I appreciate her help in putting together this recommendation, and it is a better bill because of her work on it. The bill totals $37.4 billion, which is $259 million above last year's level and $168 million above the request. Increases over last year are targeted to those areas where they are needed most to provide for our nation's defense and to support our nation's infrastructure. This is a responsible bill, one that corrects a number of budget gimmicks used by the administration to get around the discretionary budget caps. The bill provides strong support for the Department of Energy's national defense programs. It fully funds the ongoing stockpile life extension programs and the Ohio-class ballistic missile submarine replacement. It will also make a substantial progress towards addressing the continued deterioration of legacy facilities across our enterprises. This bill rejects the budget request proposal to reduce investment in the energy sources that we rely on today. Within energy program, the bill rebalances the portfolio to provide a true all-of-the-above energy strategy. Yet again, the administration cut funding for the Army Corps of Engineers this year by $1.4 billion. Even as it used gimmicks to avoid the budget caps and increase spending elsewhere in this budget request. This is the funding that protects our citizens, our businesses, and our infrastructure from damages caused by floods and coastal storms. And that ensures our ports and waterways are able to move cargo and bulk goods around the country and internationally. This bill increases funding for the Corps of Engineers by $100 million above last year. The bill includes strong support for getting Yucca Mountain license application finished up, with $150 million going to the Department of Energy and $20 million to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Finally, the bill includes provisions to stop the administration's regulatory overreach, which continues to harm our economy. I thank you for your time and attention. I respectfully ask for a rule that provides for an orderly consideration of this bill.
Mr. Simpson, thank you very much. I want you to know that the gentleman, Dr. Burgess, and I have spent a large amount of time during this year of 2016 in not only working with the Corps of Engineers, but trying to get them to focus on the needs that we believe were most important to his congressional district and a great big dam that, as a result of excessive water that we've had, needed to be relooked at. And I want you to know that the Corps of Engineers has done an awesome job. They have been listening to us. They've been reacting to us. They tried to work in a public way. They tried to work in a private way. And they have delivered what I believe is good service. Now, with that said, we're also working on with some other projects that offer them a chance to work with their partners, the EPA and several others, including organization within Texas. So I would just provide feedback to you that I believe that what you're doing here is worthy. I think increasing their budget and expecting them, especially in a year when we have new transportation projects, as we did last year, that will be coming online this year, allow things to be done properly. I think the Corps has a say in the matter. We've asked them to do things right, and I think they've gotten a whole lot better over the years because I think we're funding them properly. So I want to thank you for your attention. Ms. Capter, we're going to have you come on up and have a seat right here. Chairman Simpson has gone through his talking points most adequately. We would now defer to you, even though I'm almost through with my questioning. We're going to go right to you, Marcy, or delighted that you're without objection, anything you have in writing, as well as the young gentleman from Idaho, will be put to the record. Gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank you always for your openness to our testimony, and Ranking Member Slaughter as well, and members of the Rules Committee. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today. We're happy to be up before the next group. And this bill funds transformative programs, as you well know, that unlock America's full economic potential. Our critical water resource projects, navigability, navigation channels, and port operability. It supports breakthrough science advancements necessary for America's strategic and competitive posture and undergirds our nation's defense through superior weapons, naval reactor research, and non-proliferation activities, all priorities that unite us rather than divide us. Chairman Simpson has worked very hard to incorporate the interests of members from both parties, and as a result, the funding in this bill reflects priorities from both sides of the aisle. The chairman's efforts have resulted in a bill which, with respect to the funding levels, is reasonable, though the trade-offs are perhaps not ideal. The bill provides an increase of $259 million over the 2016 levels, and the funding allows for stronger investments in the Army Corps of Engineers for critical projects in the Everglades and the Great Lakes, as well as additional funding above the budget request to address flooding in areas like Houston. And the bill also provides robust funding for many areas of the Department of Energy. Despite this increase, I am disappointed by the funding levels of two major programs. The non-proliferation account, while meeting the administration's request, remains $132.4 million below fiscal year 2016. And while the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy is leading the charge into the new energy economy with stiff competition that we face from Asia and Europe, it receives $248 million below the 2016 request. The funding levels of the bill are clearly a good basis for negotiation, and I appreciate the Chairman's strong support for many areas in the bill which fuel our nation's economic growth. However, the inclusion of controversial riders is an unnecessary diversion from our primary responsibility, and that is ensuring that taxpayer funds are invested wisely in federal programs that will contribute to the economic vitality of our nation. Similar provisions have imperiled passage of this bill in the past, and for the year 2016, nearly all of the Democratic members of the House, sadly, had to vote against the bill with far fewer poison pill riders. Chairman Sessions, I respectfully ask that the committee provide an open rule. And finally, I would be remiss if I did not express my deep appreciation again for the bipartisan and measured approach the Chairman has taken in the process of developing this product. And while I disagree with several of the funding levels and with the riders which were included, the Chairman is a man of his word, and he runs our committee effectively and without rancor. He's a gentleman always. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today.
Mr. Capito, thank you. Your conversations with me, whether they're private or in public, are always straightforward, to the point, and with good reason. And I want to thank you very, very much for being here today. I've now finished my question of the chairman, but I will defer to the gentlewoman from Grandfather Community, North Carolina. Gentlewoman's recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. You and I share great respect for both of these members, and I appreciate their being here and the hard work that they are doing on this legislation. I have no questions, but again, I thank them both and want them both to know I respect them a great deal.
Gentlewoman yields her time. Thank you very much. The gentlewoman, the ranking member.
Thank you very
Yes,
much.
ma'am.
You know, it's really a pleasure doing business with both of you. I've always enjoyed it. It's a very hard committee, and you do it so well. And I think that seriously, what you attend to are the needs for the nation. I'm extremely grateful to you because I have a University of Rochester has this. Let me read it so I don't garble what it's doing. It's one of the core facilities, Omega Laser Facility, home to one of the most powerful lasers in the world with 500 scientists as part of the program. And what they do is keep the stockpile of weapons under check at all times, among other things, and a great deal of research, including fusion. I thank you both, and not just on behalf certainly of my people. I need to say that because it's there. But what you do here is really to help us move with research and to move ahead and stay up with everybody else in this world that's moving ahead of us on these issues. So thank you both. Mr. Simpson, you are truly an honest broker, if there is one to deal with. And Marcy and I are been friends for just about forever. So thank you both for your good work, and I appreciate it, and I know the country does as well.
Thank you.
I must confess to both of you, not everybody receives the kind of treatment that you're receiving today. So I don't know if this will continue
Yeah.
very long or not, but we're, and don't I know that? Mr. McGovern, do you seek time?
Yeah,
Gentleman's recognized.
I thank both my colleagues for being here. I appreciate the work that you've done. The administration, I want to ask unanimous consent to submit the
Without objection.
administration's statement of which the president, the advisors say if the president were presented with this bill, he would veto it. In the statement here, I mean, they have some kind words for some of the things that you've tried to do. They object strongly to the ideological policy riders, but the main criticism is that this bill is woefully underfunded where it should be. So while I appreciate the work that you've done, I think there is an issue of whether we're meeting our needs with proper funding levels, and I would submit this for the record.
Great, thank you very much. Without objection, that was accepted. Thank you very much. Judge Hastings? Mr. Polis? Does any Republican, the gentleman from Georgia?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to mention to Ms. Capter, since she didn't get to hear it, the chairman's opening statement where he said this is a better bill because of the ranking member's involvement. We don't get to hear that every day either up here, I would say to my friend from New York, so I appreciate that. I want to talk a little bit about ARPA-E. 5% increase, I think, that the committee recommended projects that the private sector can't take on. It's a relatively new program, but it's received a lot of dollars and a lot of fluctuating dollars over the last 4 or 5 years. So can the committee tell me a little bit about its success? I'd like to see us doing things that no one else will do in hopes of the next big breakthrough. But is the committee's position that this is a program that has been working well and worthy of another increase?
Well, thank you for the question. I believe it is. It's a program that, as you mentioned, is taking on research of projects that can't be done by the private sector, essentially, or too far out there to be done by the private sector that will have a return for our economy. And this bill funds ARPA-E at $306 million, a $14 million increase above last year, and $44 million below the request. ARPA-E currently is in the 7th year of its existence, has helped to accelerate the creation of transformational energy technologies through a unique funding approach. Each project is fully funded in one appropriation year, even though the project may go on for a few years. Each ARPA-E project must abide by strict go or no-go milestones, which is linked to their funding plan. This project management style has garnered success. Since the creation, 45 ARPA-E projects have received more than $1.25 billion in follow-on funding. The bill has to balance many competing priorities, and this level of funding for ARPA-E is a responsible investment for future energy innovations. And I was interested in Mr. McGovern's comment where the administration said that the funding level was inadequate. It's actually, in this bill, substantially higher than what the administration recommended in their budget request.
I love that go or no-go funding style. That brings me to part two, your increase in the Corps of Engineers budget, which I appreciate. I regret that the rules of the House prohibit you from designating where those dollars go and how those get funded. We have projects in Georgia, not different from the ones in Texas, that are dragging on and getting more and more expensive because we're unable to fund them in a go or no go. The American taxpayer is the loser there. The American consumer is the loser there. It's not Congress or the administration. It's all of us. And I regret that the leadership that you all have provided is not allowed to target some of those projects more directly. But perhaps that will change in coming years.
If I could say, Congressman, that I agree with you. It is the Army Corps of Engineers is obviously one of the more important things, and I appreciate the chairman's opening comments on the Army Corps and working with them. What we found is that while we can't specify projects, that would be earmarks, and we don't do those types of things anymore, working with them to address members' concerns in various areas, they've been very responsive in trying to address members' concerns. And it is interesting that the administration continues in their budget for the 2nd year in a row to reduce substantially the amount of money from the year before that went into the Army Corps of Engineers. Now, I think there's a strategy there. I've seen it happen at the state level when governors do this, and I'm sure that it happened in every administration, that they fund programs at levels below what they know Congress is going to fund them at, knowing we're going to put money back into them so that they can use the funds to do other things that they think are a higher priority with them. This time it was $1.4 billion that we had to find within our budget, plus some gimmicks that were made in their budget to make up, to fully fund the Army Corps of Engineers and to make sure that we fully funded at the WARDA level. In fact, we're above the WARDA level because of the amount of taxes and stuff that came in. It actually went down this year, which nobody anticipated. But funding the infrastructure that the Army Corps of Engineers does is vitally important to our economy. And I'm glad that members recognize that. And when they have issues with the Army Corps, not everybody is always happy with the decision of the Army Corps, but they work hard to try to satisfy the requests of both members and constituents in their various districts.
I wanted to make a comment as well, if the gentleman would yield. And we had a figure of unfinished Corps projects totaling upwards of $60 billion. So even if we're able to provide an additional billion, think about how much is backlogged around our country, and I'm sure it exists. The backlogs are in each of the places that each of you members represents, because it's in every state, it's in every corner of the country. And I just want to express the view that I think each of us knows our districts better than anybody in the executive branch. And I think that there is an imbalance in terms of we as the legislative branch have to ask permission of the executive branch for projects that are important to our region. I wish we could find a path forward where we resume some of the power that we used to have to meet members' requests. And it's a lopsided relationship right now, and it isn't fair to the 435 members that serve here, and it makes our job more difficult. And the legislative branch should stand on its own 2 feet again. I just wanted to place that on the record.
I think we would all agree there were some well-publicized abuses and distortions that led to that change. The kind of leadership and stewardship that the two of you all are providing is the best pathway back to regaining that trust and regaining that influence over the process. And I hope we will get there together. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Mr. Wardall, thank you very much. The gentleman from Louisville, Texas, Dr. Burgess.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and I thank you for mentioning the project that we jointly went and visited earlier this year in the 26th Congressional District in Texas. I got a big dam in my district. I mean, a big dam. It is the largest earthen berm west of the Mississippi River. It was conceived and authorized by Congress before I was born. It was finished over 60 years ago, and like some of us over 60, every now and then it needs a little work. And it was getting some work done, but this past calendar year 2015, we had a historic rainfall in North Texas, and some of the work that was needed went from chronic to acute. And the dam ended up on the front page of the newspaper, and that's never a good thing that a dam in your district is on the front page of the newspaper. The reason I bring that up is the Corps of Engineers, not only did they listen to us about accelerating some of the projects, they actually already had the projects underway, but the timeline for completion was so far in the distance that it was probably not in my natural lifetime, and I wanted it moved so perhaps I could live to see those improvements done. But more importantly, they responded to our requests. They did appear with Chairman Sessions and I at an editorial board meeting down at the Dallas Morning News last December. They didn't have to do it, but the newspaper was the one who had brought attention to the fact that the dam was having problems, and the Corps wanted to be transparent and upfront and went to the editorial board meeting. It's not an easy thing to do if you're not used to doing it, going to an ed board meeting, but they did, and they answered questions, and I think they answered them appropriately. And then subsequently, I think, Mr. Chairman, your subcommittee was able to reprogram some money to accelerate some of the studies and mitigation efforts that were already ongoing. It's not that these were new projects. They were already ongoing, but they were able to move ahead a little faster than they otherwise would have done. And so I was grateful to the Corps for responding, grateful to them being willing to provide access to the public for information that the public was wanting, and I think was necessary. And again, they didn't have to do that. They could have just gone about doing their business and said the newspaper was wrong, and we're just going to fix what we need to fix. But they stood up and did the right thing, and I'm very appreciative that they did so. The concept that the bill is more than the president's request, I get the issue here of moving priorities around. We see this in other appropriations bills as well. Take this money out because we know Congress is going to put it back in, then we get credit for being more parsimonious with the public dollar, and the Congress will take the criticism. And I recognize there will be criticism taken for voting for this bill, and I get that. But on the other hand, sometimes it's just the right thing to do, and you've got to do it. And I'm proud to be able to support you and your efforts and what you've put forward. So I thank you for bringing that to us today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. I would add to the gentleman, I know he would say this, but the Honorable Eddie Bernice Johnson from Dallas, Texas, also was very participatory with Mike to make sure that happens. The biggest issue to me was he kept talking about a big problem that is a dam, and I referred to it as a damn problem that he had. And he told me, listen, buddy, if this thing is not fixed, your district is downstream too. And so it immediately became a dam that was a problem to me instead of a damn big problem. And Mike was very eloquent doing that. Mr. Burgess, Dr. Burgess, thank you very much for your leadership on that issue. I enjoyed that and hope that we can work on it till it's finalized. The gentleman from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to both of you for being here with us today and working on such an important piece of legislation for all of us around the country. And just had a couple of questions to ask. I think all three of us share something in common, I believe. I know we do in Idaho and Washington and maybe Ohio as well. We have interest in finding a permanent home for some of the nuclear waste that we have in our state. And so just a couple of questions surrounding the Yucca Mountain site in Nevada and what this bill, how this bill deals with that as being a permanent site for our nation. I've been there myself, and I can't think of a better place. I know that this has been one of the most studied projects in the history of our country, and so I'm just curious as to the how that's being handled in this. And then also the, if you could give me some ideas to the commitment of the federal government in continuing to deal with the waste, particularly at Hanford, but also in the whole Department of Energy environmental management complex. And if you could just make a couple statements about that, I'd be interested.
I thank you for the question. Clean up the nuclear legacy is very important to the nation as a whole, but particularly to you with Hanford in your district and to me with the INL in our district and the cleanup that goes on there. And obviously, what do we do with some of the waste? Some of it is going into WIP, which is having problems, and we've got funding in here to make sure that we keep WIP on track to get reopened. The debate about what to do about the high-level waste that was anticipated to go to Yucca Mountain has been a debate that's been going on for several years in Congress. The law of the land is Yucca Mountain is the permanent repository for this waste. That's the law of the land. It hasn't changed. So we continue to fund it so that we can continue to do the studies and the research and so forth that's necessary to get in the licensing that's necessary to get Yucca Mountain open. The administration is opposed to pursuing Yucca Mountain and wants to go to interim storage, which the Senate, as I understand, has put in their bill. We have tried in the past to come up with some way to compromise on that, but we have not been able to do it. I suggested at one time if you'll leave money in the conference or in the conference report, the final bill for Yucca Mountain, we'll accept starting a pilot program for interim storage. Well, they wouldn't leave money in the bill for Yucca Mountain because the majority leader at the time was from Nevada and refused to put that in the bill. And so they just wanted to strip out Yucca Mountain. Of course, our Energy and Commerce Committee says, wait a minute, Yucca Mountain is the law of the land. Why would we do that? So we have not been able to reach a compromise on that, and it is very frustrating because we all know that even if you were to open Yucca Mountain tomorrow, it would be filled. You're still going to have to do interim storage in the long run. So you need both of these options moving forward, and that's what we've been trying to work towards with both me and Marcy and Lamar Alexander, the chairman of the committee, and Dianne Feinstein, the ranking member on the other side. We understand the problems. We also understand that we have to pass a bill, and there are differences between the House and the Senate on how to get there. Whether we can resolve it in this bill, we'll debate it. I'm sure it'll be a highly contentious debate in the conference, or whether it waits for another administration. I don't know, to see which way we move forward on this. But the bill funds the defense environmental cleanup at $5.2 billion, which is $63 million below last year, and $8.4 million below the budget request. Within that, Hanford is funded at $2.3 billion. $94 million below fiscal year 2016, but $38 million above the budget request. And I share the gentleman's support for the Hanford cleanup. I have said many times that if we ever contaminate the Columbia River, you can kiss nuclear power goodbye in this country. The additional $38 million above the request will provide a boost for what was planned to be for the Richland site office. We will continue to monitor things, and the site will remain a priority because of the importance of cleaning up the legacy of nuclear waste production at the Hanford site. But they have Hanford, as you know, has the most complex cleanup site in the country with millions of gallons of waste that has to be taken care of, and the construction of the waste treatment plant out there that is, if anybody's seen it, it is huge, and boy, there's a lot of concrete there.
Well, I appreciate that. Ms. Kaptur, would you have any comments?
The backlog on environmental management across the country, I've just tried to get the total backlog. I've been given a number of $6.2 billion. That sounds way too low to me. The amount of money that is spent in places like Yucca and then unused, I've served in Congress a long time. I've never served on a subcommittee that has that kind of expenditure with no result. So my eyes were open very wide.
Yeah.
And I know in your region of the country, we've had multiple witnesses and many hearings on Hannaford. And so I think there's wide recognition of the attention that's needed there. So if you need any reassurance that we are very aware of what you are facing, we are as a subcommittee. But there's only so much money to go around. And I'm hoping that on the ARPA-E side and on a lot of the work that we do on nuclear research and so forth, we can find more efficient ways to reprocess the waste and dispose of the waste, as well as related materials. And that's why it's important that we invest in the future as well. But we are very aware of what you're facing at that site. It's one of the most complex regions that have to be cleaned up. And we know it costs a boatload.
I appreciate that, and I do appreciate the limited funds that we have to work with, and so efficiency and looking to the future and doing it as in the best way possible certainly makes sense to me. And like I said, I had been to Yucca Mountain before. If we don't move forward with that, just aside from my own observation, coming away from there, to me that would be I think it was $8 billion, but I can't remember exactly the amount of money we've invested. More than that, multi-billion-dollar monument to government inefficiency if we just walked away from this hole in the ground. And so I would hope that we would continue with the law of the land. And also I do appreciate the continued commitment, the commitment of the federal government to continuing the cleanup of nuclear waste around the country. And so I appreciate very much your work on that, and we'll continue to look forward to working with both of you on this very important issue. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no further questions. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, if I could say, just since not anything was really said about it, and not to prolong this any longer than necessary, but the challenge in our bill oftentimes is between the Army, is the energy and water bill, is between the water side of it and the energy side of it. And I've got to tell you that if any of you get the opportunity to go out to any of your national laboratories or any of the universities that do research that is funded by the Department of Energy, It is fascinating what they're doing. They are, just like Ken Burns did the film that our national parks were America's best idea, you know. I tell you what, a close second is the national laboratories in this country, what they do, whether it's at PNNL at Hanford or at the INL or Savannah River or any of these places. They do some incredible work that is moving this country forward in terms of research and development. And they're doing it on things that, as Ms. Slaughter was saying at Rochester, things that would not be done otherwise, because no company, no individual has the resources to do the type of research that they're doing. If you look at, and I don't want to get out of school here, but if you look at when they first built the first nuclear-powered submarine, I think they had to refuel it in about 6 months, which means it had to come in, take the fuel out, put new fuel in. Because of the research that's been done on improving the efficiency of fuel rods and so forth, now when they put a nuclear aircraft carrier out into the ocean, it's fueled for the life of the ship. When you think about that, it's amazing. All of a sudden, all the diesel fuel that they used to have to put into these ships, they don't have to do anymore. When I talked to a commander of an admiral of one of the aircraft carriers, he said, you know, if we're out in the middle of the Atlantic now, it used to be if we got deployed to somewhere, they would have to wait till a fuel ship came to fuel them and fuel all their other ships to go. So we don't have to do that anymore. We turn around and go, and we carry the fuel for the other ships or for the airplanes and so forth. So it's fascinating what our national laboratories are doing. But I would encourage any of you to get out, visit them, and see what they'll do. And I'll tell you what, you'll walk away awe-inspired by what they do.
I would say I'll just share briefly, if I could, 3 or 4 examples of the research and its practical application to life. One is in the area of nuclear medicine. I saw in California at one of our labs a thin filament that had the tiniest particle on the end. You almost couldn't see it. It was a nuclear particle to be used in the treatment of prostate cancer, where only bad cells would be irradiated, not the good cells. Where they're headed with that research is just, 21st century, really. Then I saw a project where sunlight is being converted to another form of energy by bypassing photosynthesis, where you have direct conversion into a biofuel. It's amazing to think about, but they're working on that. Another thing that I saw was if we take the production of energy here and the transmission of energy somewhere else, we lose anywhere between 40, 50% of it, sometimes 60%, depending what part of the country you're in. Looking at a filament that is 100% efficient from point of generation to point of use. And finally, and I'll just say this because each of us represent communities that have water and sewage treatment plants, the Department of Energy is now looking at the energy-water nexus, which used to be kind of separate over there, but now they're looking at it together. If you check for your water and wastewater treatment plants, the amount of money your communities spend for power, I think it'll knock you over. I calculated it for all of the plants that I represent in the region I represent, which is a long, winding lakefront region, and it's terribly inefficient. And I've said to the Department of Energy, what could you do to move America into the new energy age by helping these communities cut their power bills and apply new technology? It's unbelievable how much can be done, but they really, they haven't put the parts together to do that. But I really think it's breakthrough thinking. And it's really for the betterment of life in our country, and I'm sure, other countries that will benefit by what we do here. But I just wanted to put some of those innovations on the record because I think they're extraordinary.
Well, let me concur. We could all probably go tell stories. I was in New Mexico, southern New Mexico, and went and visited a plant that essentially did these rods, these fusion rods, and it is utterly incredible. And they add $800 million worth of investment to this industry every year, and we have not, what was figured out by a German scientist in the 40s, we still haven't figured out how he did it. But we just keep doing these things, and it's amazing what our mathematicians and our scientists can get done. I want to thank both of you for being here. I will tell you this is one of the most important activities of this appropriations bill, and both of you spending not only time, but showing up together and getting this done is very important. Once again, we could spend time up here trying to yell and scream at each other. Over the last few weeks, we found that over and over and over, common sense people have come who've been working for a long time with each other, found common ground, worked together, found leadership, and to get it done. And I appreciate both of you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. This now. This panel is through. If there's any other member that seeks to give testimony on H.R. 5055, seeing none, this now closes the hearing portion of H.R. 5055. I would notify the committee that what we're going to try and do, we're about 10 minutes, 12 minutes away from a vote. We're going to aim to, as soon as the last vote is taken, to come back. We'll hustle. We'll get through that and be ready to go. So that's what we're trying to get our work done today. At the end of the last vote, we'll come on up here. So subject to call the chair, we're done with our work till then.
we don't allow now, we don't allow anything that looks like, so, and then, no, they did, there was a problem. There was a problem. So, but no, that's true. So these are state legislation now. So if you want to start out preventing anything that looks like it could be
Ready? Rules Committee to come to order, and thank you very much for allowing us a chance to get back. We're going to move forward after hearing our markups today, and Chairman will be in receipt of a motion from the gentlewoman from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee grant a rule providing for the consideration of the Senate amendment to H.R. 2576, the TSCA Modernization Act of 2015. The rule makes an order a motion offered by the chair of the Committee on Energy and Commerce or his designee that the House concur in the Senate amendment to H.R. 2576 with an amendment inserting the text of Rules Committee Print 114-54 modified by the amendment printed in the Rules Committee report in lieu of the matter proposed to be inserted by the Senate. The rule waives all points of order against consideration of the motion and provides that the motion is not subject to a demand for division of the question. The rule provides that the Senate amendment and the motion shall be considered as read. The rule provides 1 hour debate on the motion equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Energy and Commerce. Section 2 of the rule provides for consideration of H.R. 897, the Reducing Regulatory Burdens Act of 2015 under a closed rule. The rule provides 1 hour debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. The rule waives all points of order against consideration of the bill. The rule provides that an amendment in the nature of a substitute consisting of the text of Rules Committee Print 114-53 shall be considered as adopted and the bill as amended shall be considered as read. The rule waives all points of order against provisions in the bill as amended. Finally, the rule provides one motion to recommit with or without instructions.
You've now heard the motion from the gentlewoman from North Carolina. Is there discussion or amendment to that?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have an
Gentlewoman's
amendment.
recognized.
I move the committee grant H.R. 897 an open rule and move the resolution, make the House amendment to the Senate amendment to H.R. 2576, subject to further amendment under an open process, so that all members have the opportunity to offer amendments to the bills on the floor.
Thank you very much. Discussion. Those in favor of the slaughter amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. No. Noes have it, noes have it.
Roll call, I guess we better.
Gentlewoman asks for a roll call vote.
Ms. Fox? No. Ms. Fox? No. Mr. Cole? Mr. Woodall? No. Mr. Woodall? No. Mr. Burgess? Mr. Burgess? No. Mr. Stivers? No. Mr. Stivers? No. Mr. Collins? Mr. Byrne? No. Mr. Byrne? No. Mr. Newhouse? Ms. Slaughter?
Aye.
Ms. Slaughter? Aye. Mr. McGovern? Aye. Mr. McGovern? Aye. Mr. Hastings? Mr. Hastings? Aye. Mr. Polis? Aye. Mr. Polis? Aye. Mr. Chairman?
No.
Mr. Chairman, no.
Clerk report the total.
4 yeas, 6 nays.
The amendment's not agreed to, not agreed to. Further amendment or discussion? Seeing none, the vote will now be on the amendment, the motion from the gentlewoman from North Carolina. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
The ayes have it, the ayes have it. Accordingly, the gentleman, Mr. Woodall, will be handling this for Republicans.
And Mr. Polis for the Democrats.
And Mr. Polis for Democrats. Thank you very much. We will now move to the second rule. The gentlewoman from North Carolina is recognized for the purpose of the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee grant H.R. 5055, the Energy and Water Development and Related Agencies Appropriations Act 2017, a modified open rule. The rule provides 1 hour of general debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Appropriations. The rule waives all points of order against consideration of the bill. The rule waives points of order against provisions in the bill for failure to comply with Clause 2 of Rule 21. The rule provides that after general debate, the bill shall be considered for amendment under the 5-minute rule, except that 1, amendments shall be debatable for 10 minutes, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and an opponent. And 2, no pro forma amendment shall be in order except that the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Appropriations or their respective designees may offer up to 10 pro forma amendments each at any point for the purpose of debate. The rule authorizes the chair to accord priority and recognition to members who have pre-printed their amendments in the congressional record. The rule provides one motion to recommit with or without instructions. Section 2 of the rule provides that Section 508 of H.R. 5055 shall be considered to be a spending reduction account for purposes of Section 3D of House Resolution 5. Finally, Section 3 of the rule provides that during consideration of H.R. 5055, Section 3304 of Senate Concurrent Resolution 11 shall not apply.
You've now heard the motion from the gentlewoman. Is there amendment or discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Gentleman, Massachusetts.
Mr. Chairman, this is not an open rule. We're discouraging debate by limiting the amount of time and the number of people who can offer amendments. So I move the committee grant H.R. 5055 a truly open rule so that all members have the opportunity to offer amendments on the bill on the floor.
Thank you very much. Discussion. Vote now be on the McGovern amendment. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. No. Noes have it, noes have it. Any further amendment or discussion?
Yeah. Roll call, please.
Gentlewoman asked for a roll call vote on the McGovern amendment.
Ms. Fox? No. Ms. Fox, no. Mr. Cole? Mr. Woodall? No. Mr. Woodall, no. Mr. Burgess? Mr. Burgess, no. Mr. Stivers? No. Mr. Stivers, no. Mr. Collins? Mr. Byrne? No. Mr. Byrne, no. Mr. Newhouse? Ms. Slaughter?
Aye.
Ms. Slaughter, aye. Mr. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Mr. Hastings? Yes. Mr. Hastings, aye. Mr. Polis? Aye. Mr. Polis, aye. Mr. Chairman?
No.
Mr. Chairman, no.
Clerk reports total.
4 yeas, 6 nays.
The motion, the amendment's not agreed to, not agreed to. Further amendment or discussion? Seeing none, the vote now be on the motion from the gentlewoman from North Carolina. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
The ayes have it, the ayes have it. Accordingly, the gentleman, Mr. Newhouse, will be handling this for Republicans.
And I will handle it for the Democrats.
Ms. Slaughter will be handling this for Democrats. Want to announce that tomorrow at 3 o'clock, we'll have a meeting on the energy bill and H.R. 5233, the D.C. budget. So we'll have our hands full tomorrow. Look forward to seeing you then. Thank you very much.